Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Now it is time to introduce our main speaker for tonight, Dave.
Hi, my name is David Delbus, and I am an alcoholic. And first off, it's good to be sober. It's good to be in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd like to thank Dave for asking me to come out here and share with you guys today. I appreciate the advance notice he gave me. He called me today at 4 and asked me if I could come out here, and I was happy to do it. You know, I had to I had to clear it with the higher power. I had to call my wife, make sure it was okay. You know, hey, you know what? You get sober and we start thinking it's about just being a service all the time. And you know what? It talks about that in the 12th step a little bit. It talks about practicing these principles in all of our affairs. And my wife is part of my life, and my kids, and all those kind of things. And I got to balance it out a little bit. And I'm more than ready to be going to meetings all the time and just showing up and doing this kind of stuff. And I've learned how to just balance it out a little bit. And I just have to check in when I do anything like this. And but it's an amazing opportunity to be able to get up here and share with you guys. And I'm one of those people that absolutely loves Alcoholics Anonymous. I really do. I don't like AA just a little bit. I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. I really do. And that is not the attitude I walked in here with. I'm just to give you my quick stats. Today I'm going to be 47 years old in March. I got sober when I was 24 years old. I'm just a little over 22 years sober, and it's just amazing what has happened in my life since I got sober, because I am one of those people that was never ever going to get sober. Now, I just said just a second ago that I loved AA and I love the opportunity to do this kind of stuff, but that's not the attitude I walked in with. When I walked through the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous at the age of 24 years old, I didn't look like I do now. I was actually, just to give you like a visual snapshot of what I looked like when I got sober. I weighed about 110 pounds. I was completely insane. I wasn't just a little bit insane, I was completely insane. I had been suffering from auditory and visual hallucinations for about 3 years by that point. I was just so nuts, and I was completely insane, and I was dying of alcoholism. And the biggest meeting of the night, of the week where I got sober, was a group called the Dunsmore Club. And there's still meetings there today, but I got in there, and the biggest meeting of the night was a Sunday night speaker meeting. And I would show up there, and it was one of those meetings where it's kind of a lot like this. If you didn't show up at least a half an hour before the meeting started, you ended up sitting on the floor. And you would go in there, and there was a lot of good feelings. There was a buzz and a camaraderie going on, and people would share at the different meetings and the participation meetings and the step studies and all the different meetings that they had there, because they have meetings, you know, all the time. Morning, noon, and night, they had meetings going on. And people would say that they loved AA, and they thought that AA was the greatest thing since sliced bread. And to me, I didn't get that, because I would go into that meeting that was packed full of people with that connection and that bond going on, and I wasn't a part of it. And when people would talk about how much they loved AA, when they would get up to the podium and they would say things like they were a grateful alcoholic, or they would say something like how much they loved AA, and they loved me and they loved you, and don't you just love AA? And I would sit in my chair and I would wish they would die of a heart attack at the podium. That's just my opinion. That's just my feelings that I had, because I didn't have those kind of feelings. And the main reason why is because you were asking me to give up the thing that meant more to me than anything else in the entire world. And you are asking me to give up my alcohol and my drugs. And I don't know about anybody else here, but I absolutely love alcohol and drugs. I don't like them just a little bit. I absolutely love them. And I don't say that in a past tense phrase. If I could drink and get loaded and get away with it, I'd be drunk and loaded right now. I would. But the thing is that I can't drink and get loaded and get away with it. because in the end stages of the game when I was getting loaded, I was paying some hideous and horrible price. But that's not the way it started out, you know. In the beginning, it was good. And I always like to share with you a little bit how I grew up in La Crescenta. It's kind of an upper middle class neighborhood, kind of a high-end blue-collar, low-end white-collar neighborhood. And even before I started drinking and doing drugs, I didn't feel like I fit in. My parents were kind of frugal, and they didn't buy me like new clothes. And at the beginning of every school year, like in September, it seemed like everybody got new school clothes, but not me. My parents bought all my clothes at thrift stores. You know, everybody else is getting like in September, brand new 501 button-fly jeans. And it seemed to me like they were getting like 10 pairs. And they were all wearing pressed white t-shirts. And they were all wearing like Nike and Puma tennis shoes. Those were really big and they were coming in. And like I said, my parents didn't buy me anything new. They bought all my stuff at thrift stores. And they would say things like, you know what, you'll grow into it eventually. And it's just like, I don't want to grow into it eventually, you know? And I would be wearing boots and everybody else is wearing tennis shoes. And the reason I'm wearing boots is because the boots like are sturdy and they last longer. And if you're in the schoolyard and everybody else is wearing tennis shoes and you're wearing boots, you're a goober. There's no other word to describe it, you know? And that's just the way I felt. When I was new in Alcoholics Anonymous, there was a gentleman by the name of Bobby Suazo. Now, I love the ghosts of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you don't know who the ghosts are, if you're brand new, or even if you've been here for a while, you probably know who they are. They're the people that they share, and they seem to be able to touch people. And they're people that other people continue to talk about after they've gone. You know, and they're very powerful people, and they touch people in a lot of different ways, you know. And my ghost was this guy named Bobby Suazo. And when everybody else was standing up at the podium talking about how wonderful AA was and all that kind of stuff, and I'm not identifying, I'm not belonging, I'm not fitting in, he would get up to the podium and he would say, you know what, when I was new, I felt like a turd with eyeballs. Now that guy got my attention because that's the way I felt. And that was just how the way things are. And I'm not what you call I'm not very good in like schoolwork. I'm what you call, my friend Nancy calls a D-stop student, which basically means that I deserve an F, but they're tired of looking at me and they would give me a passing grade and they would push me on. I'm also the kind of person that I don't do well on the sports field. I don't know about anybody else here, but when they would pick up like dodgeball teams and football teams and soccer teams and basketball teams when you were in elementary school and early junior high school, I was never like a team captain. I was never like first string or second string or third string. Got down to the point where there'd be like two of us left and they'd go, you know what? You take David and we'll take Susie with the crutch. And it's just like, man, you know, I don't want to play anyway. And you know what they're doing, don't you? They're publicly humiliating me, and I don't like that. I've got these feelings of not fitting in, of not belonging, of not being a part of. And for God's sakes, don't point it out in a public forum in a group of my peers, you know, and that's just the way I felt. And I couldn't have told you that. I've learned all that in sobriety, in hindsight. Hindsight's 20/20. I've learned that as a result of doing the steps, taking the action, digging into my past, looking at myself. You know, we talk about self-examination a lot around here. And to me, that's how I found this stuff out, but I didn't know it at the time. And I just didn't do well, and I just kind of went along my little life, you know. We talk about tools for living around here. You know, you don't have tools for living when you're that age, you know. Your parents provide for you everything that you need. You just kind of shoot up and show up, and you just do what you're supposed to do, or the best you can. And that's just the way it was. And then I got to that magic age of 14. You know, that seems to be a key age for a lot of people, and it was my key age. And, you know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, we get nicknames in AA. I know a guy they call Non-Controversial Steve, and another guy they call Ungrateful Bud, and there's another guy I know called Never Late Jim. And I'm sure there's some people in this room here tonight who have some AA nickname or handle. And actually, I have a nickname in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my nickname in AA is Treehouse David. That's my nickname in AA. And the reason they call me Treehouse David is because I spent a brief period of my life that I was out there drinking and getting loaded, living in a treehouse that I built in my parents' front yard. Now, that brief period of time was 10 years. Now, that just gives you an idea. You know, when you see those things on those report cards that say, does not play well with others, you know, I was like, that was like keyed to me. And what happened was I ended up building this treehouse in my parents' front yard when I was about 14 years old. And what happened was that they were doing a lot of construction in the neighborhood. And see if anybody identifies with this particular emotion. if you weren't standing over something, it belonged to me. I don't know if anybody else identifies with that at all, but that's just the way I felt. I didn't feel bad about it. And I would go to these construction sites on the weekends and when nobody was there, and I would take all the building material I needed to build my treehouse, you know, and I took like 2x4s and sheet wood, roofing material, power saws, boxes of nails, hinges, everything I needed, whatever I needed. And when I was finally done, I actually had a pretty cool room up in a tree about 20 feet off the ground. And what it was about 5 feet wide. It was about 8 feet long. I made it so you could stand up in it. I tar papered the roof so it wouldn't leak in the rain. I ran an extension cord up there. You know, I got a little light, you know, and all these kind of things. And just a little place that I could call my own and kick back and hang out, you know, and that's just what I wanted. Got brothers and sisters. I never had my own room. I always had to share it. And this was my way of kind of like shutting out the world. And literally, maybe 3 weeks after I had finished doing it, a guy from up the street came down. And this guy's name is Mark. And Mark was about the coolest guy I knew. Mark had hair down to the middle of his back. Mark drank and did drugs and partied, and he was just like cool. And all I ever wanted to be was cool. I didn't want to be the turd with eyeballs, you know. And the thing was, is he said, "Hey, David," I could hear him calling my name out in the street. And I look out there, I'm thinking, what does he want with me? And he says, "Hey, David, do you want to party?" And I said, "Absolutely." And what I heard was, "Do you want to hang out with the coolest guy you know?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he came up there that day, and I caught a buzz. And it wasn't just a little bitty buzz. It was a great big buzz that ran from the top of my head down to the ends of my toes. And I started to laugh. And I laughed, and I laughed. I laughed so hard, I threw up. I laughed so hard. I don't know if you've ever laughed that hard. You know, you laugh so hard that you actually almost start to black out, and you get spots before your eyes, and you finally start getting some air back in your lungs, and you look over at your friend, and you just start laughing all over again. You know, it's the, oh my God. And the feeling of peace and happiness that comes across me in a situation like that. I absolutely love the effect of alcohol and drugs. Because if it did something like that for you, and I believe it does for a lot of us, you know what I'm talking about. And basically, man, that was it, man. And the best analogy I've ever been able to come up with is I was reading a story a couple of years back, and there's a story about a monk named Dom Perignon, and he basically invented champagne. And what happened was is that he was drinking it, and he was working on a batch, and he kept sipping on it. He was working on it to test it, and working on it, and sipping it, and testing it, and working on it. And it got down to the point where I guess he had been sampling it just a little bit too much, and he had been at the top of the monastery, and he ended up falling down the stairs, and all these monks run around him, and they surround him as he's laying at the bottom of the stairs. And they said to him, "Dom, what happened? Are you okay?" And he looked up at them, and he said, "I have been drinking stars." And that's exactly what it's like when I drink and I get loaded. It's like I have been drinking stars. It makes me one with the universe. I absolutely love the effect because you know what it does? Is it does something for me. And they talk about that and the doctor's opinion about that. We like the effect produced by alcohol. And man, I absolutely loved it. And it took away all those feelings. The big book describes it as this: restless, irritable, and discontented. Now, if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, you've been to a couple meetings, you might have heard somebody throw those buzzwords out. I was restless, irritable, and discontented. Then I turned it over and everything's wonderful. And you're like, what the hell are they talking about? This doesn't make any sense, you know? And the thing is that what I have been describing to you for the last 5 minutes is restless, irritable, and discontented. And when I drank and got loaded, it took it away, just like that. I don't know how well or how quickly it works for you, but that's the way it worked for me. And basically, I love the effect, and I was never going to give it up. I'm one of those people that believes that alcoholism goes into 3 basic stages for people like us. The first stage is fun with no problems. The second stage is fun with problems. And the third stage is problems and no fun. And in the beginning, it was all good. And basically, I would sit around, and I hit this thing running because of how much I enjoyed it. And the thing is when you're like 15 and 16 and 17 years old, you need a place to party. And people would come by my treehouse, and I only had one rule. You got to share with me. I love that rule. And it meant I got loaded a lot for free. And you know what it is? I'm kind of a garbage disposal. I don't care what it is. If you tell me it's going to get me drunk, if you tell me it's going to catch me a buzz, if you tell me it's going to get me loaded, I'm going to take it, drink it, huff it, puff it, shoot it. I don't particularly care, you know. And I know I'm not the only other person like that in here tonight. Is there anybody in here besides me that smoked banana peels? There's always at least some of us, yeah. And the thing is that it doesn't work. And if you've tried it and you need to catch a buzz, you feel cheated. God, I hated that. And I'm just one of those people. I'm totally a garbage disposal. And we would drink. I'm the kind of guy that when I go into your house, you know what? You got to worry about your vanilla extract because, I don't know about anybody else here, but it's like 40 proof. If you need a buzz, it'll do the job. If you're just visiting, I've given you an option. Just throw it out there, But the thing is that I don't care. And I absolutely will not stop, And I just ingest it all. And I would just sit up there and I would drink and do drugs constantly. And I absolutely was going to never give it up. And then it got down to the point where I got to be about 16 years old. And I read the life story of Jim Morrison. If you don't know who Jim Morrison is, he was the lead singer of a group called The Doors. And Jim Morrison basically drank and used himself to death. He abused himself to death with alcohol and drugs. I remember reading that and going, oh, yeah, man, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to be like a rock star because, well, I can't sing, I can't play an instrument, I don't want to come down out of my tree. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drink and use myself to death. And I decided when I was 16 years old that I was going to die when I was 25 years old. Is there anybody else in here that gave themselves death dates? There's always some of us in here. And if you've given yourself a death date, you know exactly why you do it. Because when you give yourself a death date, you no longer have to live up to the expectations of the people around you and the world outside you. Because there's expectations, but now I'm just going to burn my life to the ground. If you're a little bit younger, it might be like Kurt Cobain. If you're a little bit older, it might be like Ernest Hemingway. And what I'm talking about is the twisted poet, artist, stick a shotgun in your mouth, blow your brains out. It's better to burn out than fade away. I wanted to live my life like a rock and roll lyric. That's what I'm talking about, And I was never going to give this up, and that's what I decided to do. And now I no longer have to live up to those people that have been coming at me and telling me things like, David, you have potential. Why don't you live up to your potential? And do you know what the definition of potential is? Not worth a damn right now. That's what potential means, And the thing is that I don't know about anybody else, but when someone else told me that they thought I had potential, I thought they were trying to trick me into doing something that I wasn't going to do just because you wanted me to do it. Screw you. In my treehouse, I don't know if anybody remembers those black light posters that they used to have. I had them all over my treehouse, and my favorite one had a theme. I hear there's like a product out on this particular theme too nowadays. I've seen it on shirts and stuff like that. And basically what it is it's called the last great act of defiance. This is the theme on the poster. And on it, there's an eagle coming down, and he's getting ready to eat this mouse for breakfast. There is no way this mouse is getting away. He is eagle food in the next nanosecond. And he's got his finger up in the air just like that. And they got the definition of defiance on the bottom of the poster. Open disposition to resist. I used to sit up in my treehouse and go, yeah, come and get me. And they did. And I'll get to that in just a minute, Now I'm getting into the stage where it's fun with problems. Now I'm getting into trouble sometimes, and I'm having a good time sometimes, and sometimes I'm hitting a bullet in the chamber, and I'm getting arrested sometimes, and I'm getting in fights with people twice my size. I'm obnoxious sometimes I'm a crying drunk. I don't know about anybody else here, but I am an unsuccessful suicide. I don't know if there's any other unsuccessful suicides in here tonight, but I'm an unsuccessful suicide. There we go. And then a bunch of other people are just lying, And the thing is that I was I was really drunk one night. I was always really drunk, but this is just an example, And what happened was I decided I was going to break into a friend of mine's house. This is a really good friend of mine. And I was going to break into her house and I was going to steal something because we wanted the party to continue on. And she caught me. Now, I don't know about anybody else, but when I get caught in something like that, I'm just like, oh, I'm scum. And she's just like, David, she's like all pissed off at me. She's just like, David, just go home. And I go home, and I'm thinking to myself, now I'm in depressed, crying, jags, that kind of stuff. And I think to myself, I'm going to kill myself. And if you're anything like me, I kind of think about this, and I decide I'm going to climb up out on the freeway bridge. It's up on La Crescenta. I can still go by there. I live a half a block from there right now, from this sign that's just right below the high school. It's maybe like 70 feet off the freeway, and you go under it right off of Ramsdale on the 210 freeway. And I sit there, and as I'm walking up there, I'm climbing up on the sign, and I'm thinking about, what they're going to say about me at my funeral and how they wish they'd been nicer to me, and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about the Tom Sawyer Square Huck Finn thing, sitting in the back watching the funeral. And then, oh, yeah, that's what it's going to be. And then I get up there, and the thing is that if you've ever been in a situation like that, and all of a sudden you get to the pinnacle point where you either go or don't, and there's two things going on at this particular time, emotionally inside of us at this particular time. And you have the ego that drove us up there, and you have this sense of self-preservation that's going, no, no, no. It's very sobering, I'll tell you that right now. And I'm up there going, what am I going to do? I talk myself up in here, and it's just like the good and the bad and the evil and the good, on your shoulder, and I'm trying to decide what am I going to do, And all of a sudden, a car pulls up from down below, and some guy gets up who I barely knew from school and goes, don't jump. And I think to myself, thank God I got someone to talk me down. And I went, I won't. I climbed down off that freeway bridge, I got into his car, and we went to a party. You got to love that kind of an attitude, because that's the kind of things we do. Bill's story talks about that. He talks about, when things are crashing down around him. This is before he got really depressed, but he says, he went back to the bar after he'd lost everything. And I really identify with that, and that's just kind of stuff. And like I said, I get in fights with people twice my size. I always like to tell you that if you have to have a drunk driving to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, I got a drunk driving. I got mine on a moped. If you don't know what a moped is, basically it's a motorized bicycle. When I bought it as a perfectly good used vehicle, 6 or 8 months later, it was dying of alcoholism. I don't know if you've ever had a vehicle dying of alcoholism. My moped is dying of alcoholism. Had no headlight for a spark plug wired. Had a coat hanger going from the distributor to the spark plug, which is fine as long as you don't brush your leg up against that thing when it's running, And I was at a party, and see if anybody identifies with this particular emotion. I'm at a party, and I'm afraid I'm not going to get my fair share. Does anybody identify with that at all? I'm the kind of guy, I think you're holding out on me. That's just the way you go into the bathroom. I think you're going into the bathroom to get away from me. And that's just the way I think. And you know what? I'm at this one particular party one night. It's up at the local park, and I got this big pea army coat on. And I would go to this big ice chest full of beer, and every time I would get to the ice chest, I would grab an extra bottle. And I would stick it in one of the coat pockets when I thought nobody was looking. So it's like one for me and one for my jacket, one for me and one for my jacket, one for me and one for my jacket, till it got to the point where I couldn't get any more beer in this coat. And I turned to walk away, and you could hear like the bottles clanking as I'm walking away. And I think I'm being cool. I think I'm being slick. I think I'm getting away with something. But again, hindsight is 20/20. Back to the inventory, those kind of processes, looking at myself. I think about this, and in my mind's eye, I can see them going, at least he's leaving. And I got on that moped, and the police pulled me over. It had no headlight, and I felt picked on. Is there any other picked on people in here tonight? It's just like, I'm the kind of guy, I think the rules don't apply to me. And when I get busted and popped, not applying to the rules, I think they're picking on me. And that's just the way it was, And they ended up going to court, and they said, Mr. Dobus, we need your driver's license. And I was like 19, 20 years old by this time. And I didn't have a driver's license because, I didn't think I needed one. And they said, well, if you don't get a driver's license, we're going to put you in jail. So I thought I should get one. I actually went out, did it in Glendale, drove around, did the blind intersection at 15 miles an hour, did the parallel park on my driver's license. I was pretty proud of that thing. It was some kind of tangible piece, something I could show you, touch you, hold, feel, stick in my pocket. And even though they made me get it, because I don't do anything because I see the light, but because I feel the heat, and the heat was on, and the screws were down, and they're making me do it, that doesn't matter. I went ahead and got my license, and I showed up for court a couple weeks later, and they said, Mr. Delbus, did you get your driver's license? I said, yes, I did, Your Honor. You know what they did with my driver's license? They revoked it. I'm thinking, why do I even bother to try? The minute I get up, they just pushed me back down, and it's always outnumbered and always outmanned. And it got down to the point where I ended up taking some stuff, and I overdosed really bad, and I decided, what? I ended up having a grand mal seizure and all these kind of things, and finally what ended up happening is that I decided I needed to quit drinking because I was getting in a lot of trouble behind all the booze, and I started doing a lot of methamphetamines.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think.
I don't know if there's any other tweakers in here tonight, but I always like to say that just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you, And I used to sit there, and I would do a bunch of amphetamines up in my treehouse, and we would party and get loaded, and I would tell people, dude, you should quit drinking. I haven't had a drink in 6 months. I've only been asleep twice, but hey, not a bad trade-off. basically what happened is that I got really weird. You know, on Christmas Day of 1986, you know, I completely lost my mind. I got all paranoid. I started thinking that Care Bears were coming down from outer space to overthrow the world. I thought my parents were cyborgs, you know. My wife's favorite story is the federal squirrels, and I'll do this really quick and then I'll try to get sober here, you know. And the federal squirrels are this. You know, I'm up in a tree, and if you're tweaking really hard, everything's about you. It doesn't matter what it is, wink and blow, it's about you. The car drives by, it's about you. You know, something comes on the radio, it's about you. You know, it's just on and on and on and on, you know. And it's all out to get you, you know. And the squirrels would run across the roof of my treehouse during certain times of the day because that's what squirrels do, you know. But I didn't perceive it that way. What I perceived it was that that's not the natural behavior of squirrels, like I know what the natural behaviors of squirrels are. And the thing was that in my mind, I thought that the federal government was training squirrels. And they were down the street from my house and would go get David at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Say, ah! You know, it's just like crazy, you know, it's just insane. You know, I finally got down to the point where I was like that for a while. And I finally convinced myself that maybe the drugs were having a bad effect on me. And I decided I was going to quit doing them. And I said, no one's coming to get me. No one's coming to get me. No one's coming to get me. And that's when the Glendale Narcotics Division raided my treehouse, because I forgot to mention I was selling speed and coke and pot and everything to the local high school kids by this time, you know. And they didn't like that. They actually raided my treehouse. They didn't know how to raid a treehouse. They had to come down with a fire truck, cops and riot gear, 20 people out there, you know, coming up. And my dad came out to see what was going on. My dad is not an alcoholic, and my dad is not a drug addict. And I'm here to tell you that bottoms cannot and will not keep an alcoholic of my type, and I assume like you, sober. Outside circumstances, the book talks about it, ill health, falling in love, the warning of a doctor. You know, we might appear to be alcoholics, but it really comes down to it. If somebody who's just a problem drinker gets a warning like that, they can stop. And this is my bottom. My bottom was sitting in a holding tank with my father, and he was there because of me, because they arrested him for obstruction of justice, because he came out and he yelled up, "David, they're coming up." And they took him in. They stuck me in a holding tank with my dad. It's my opinion they wanted to see if he would kill me. That's just my opinion on that one, you know. And it was insane, you know. And I remember looking at my feet, and I remember finally looking up, and I looked my dad in the eye, and I said those 2 words that alcoholics of my type are so famous for. I'm sorry. But we're the sorriest people in the world, you know. I love this. If you've ever been in court, I know none of you ever have, but I used to get in court from time to time. And one of the things that they used to do when I would go into court is they would give me an option to plead guilty without actually saying guilty. It's called no contest. It means guilty with an explanation. And my explanation was always the same, you know. I was drunk. I was loaded. Give me another chance. Now I'm at that stage where I can no longer believe the big lie. And if you're an alcoholic of my type, you know what the big lie is. My behavior isn't hurting anybody but myself. And the kicker, the killer about denials is once you crack that ball of denial, you can never shut it out and believe what you used to believe. You know the truth, you know. And we can drink, we can get loaded, we can push it back as far as we can, but as soon as we come to or come around or whatever it is, we see it, we know the ugly truth. We can see how much damage, how much hurt we cause. And the thing is if you're anything like me, that was my parents, the ones that I worked over. I don't know who you worked over when you were out there, when you get in a jackpot, when you get in a jam. And you would sit there, and the thing is when you're working them over, when you're in trouble, and you want to be eye to eye, knee to knee, hand to hand, looking at them, because what you're looking for when you're trying to work them is you're looking for that little glimmer of hope in their eyes for your life. And you beg and you plead, and when you see that little glimmer of hope, you got it. And you take that hope and you crush it. And you take that hope and you crush it. And you take that hope and you crush it until it gets to the point where it's not that they don't want to give you the hope anymore, but they just can't. They can't risk the emotional damage and hurt that we'll get in. They know through past experience that we are going to inflict on them one more time. You know, and they sit there and they say, you know, I love you, but don't call me anymore. Don't come back. You got to go. And I've been there. You know, and it finally came down to the point where I ended up doing a bunch of stuff. I ended up going through a place called Impact House in Pasadena. I ended up going through American Hospital and all the kind of stuff that kind of worked out with that, you know. And finally what happened was that on December 19th of 1988, I showed up for court. Actually, it was December 11th. And I showed up for court, and they had violated my probation one more time. They were supposed to give me 3 years joint suspended on that particular raid that I had gotten. And they told me that if I didn't, like, clean it up and do all these things and fulfill all these obligations that the court had laid on me, that I was going to do the 3 years. And I showed up for court because I didn't finish my program. I didn't finish Impact House. I made it through. I didn't even make it past their first phase, and they threw me out after 89 days. They gave me a check for like $300 because I'd been on general relief, and I don't know about you. You give me a check, you know what I do, don't you? I get loaded with it because that's what I do. I think one of the things that kills people like you and I is when they say, just don't drink or use no matter what. Because if you're anything like me, I drink or use no matter what. I don't even need a good excuse, you know, any excuse, nothing. All you got to do is pass something my way, give me money. It doesn't matter. I could have the most powerful desire to sit there and stay clean and sober this one particular day, and it just won't happen. I can't do it. I am a hopeless alcoholic, and left to my own devices, I am doomed to hideous and horrible alcoholic death. That's what's in line for me. You know, and finally what happened was I showed up for court, and I got a burning bush in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know about anybody else here. And what happened was they lost my paperwork. They said, you're not on the docket, David. They told me 6 months earlier, do all this stuff, come back on this day. I came back, and it didn't come in. They called me in for testing the very next day, and I walked into that probation office, and I said, if you test me right now, it's coming back dirty. They looked at me, and they said, you know what, David? We're going to give you one more chance. And I'll tell you this. When we're talking about finding God around here, they say we are going to find God deep within. And I'll tell you, those particular stages and those particular times, when I walked into that courtroom knowing that I was going to jail that particular day, and I was going to do that 3 years, and I walked out of there an hour and a half later, walking down the street, there was a sense of freedom and a sense of peace and something deep inside of me saying, David, I'm giving you another chance. It says you can do what you're doing. You can keep going down the road you're going to do, and you're going to go do it. And you've heard it. Jails, institutions, and death. That's what we have for people like us. It says, but I'm giving you another chance. You don't have to do that. And you know what you need to do. Start going to the meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Start doing these things that you've been hearing about in these recovery houses, these places for the last 8-10 months that I've been doing this kind of stuff. And that's basically what I did. And I went into Alcoholics Anonymous, and I bought the package of AA. I didn't do it because I thought it would work. I was hopeless, helpless, worthless, hope to die, drug addict, tree-dwelling, dope fiend, incapable of functioning in society. I had a 9th grade education. I was suffering from auditory and visual hallucinations, and that followed me 6 months into sobriety. When they talk about that line in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, it says, we are miracles of mental health. I'm one of those people, and I've seen it happen out there. You know, we come in here and we start doing the stuff that they say around here. And I didn't believe it was going to work. I thought I was wasting my time. I didn't think I was going to amount to anything, and I felt bad. I felt bad all the time. From the minute I got up to the time I went to bed. And someone said, you know what, David, you should go out there and get a job. So I did. I went out and I got a job. I got a job at Wiener Schnitzel. If you're new, that'll give you hope, you know, and that's what I did. And I worked at that job for a little while. And then I went ahead and I got another job after that, another job after that. And I kept going to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I made Alcoholics Anonymous my priority. It's what I did. And I started doing what I heard all the people in Alcoholics Anonymous, what I call the winners in Alcoholics Anonymous, they would talk about the things that they were doing. They would say, get a copy of the Big Book of AA. I hear that a lot from the winners in AA, the elder statesmen, whatever you want to call them, the gurus, the old-timers, the people that we look at and see and we know that they're doing something around here and they're getting such a sense of peace and direction in their life. And you can't even believe that it could be offered to us. And they say, sure it can. Just go out to the meeting, show up early, be a service, make coffee, and you can get these feelings too. A sense of purpose and direction. Now, if you're new in Alcoholics Anonymous, that may not sound like a lot, but we're talking about self-respect. It's the first thing we give up when we're out there drinking and getting loaded. And it's the easiest thing we can get back just by taking a share of Alcoholics Anonymous. They offer it to us, and all we got to do is take it. It's not because you're new, we're trying to give you the grunt job and stick you in the kitchen. It's because that's the best thing we got to offer, you know. I know in some meetings that, you know what, if you're on the coffee crew, you got to wait till somebody dies before you can get a spot on it, man. That's what we're talking about, coveting these things. Going on panels, showing up, getting a sponsor. If you don't know what a sponsor is, it's somebody who's been around here for a while. Some of the old-timers I'm talking about. Even if it's somebody that's just been here for a little longer than you have, that has just a little bit ahead of you and is willing to give of their time, because we do this thing around here for fun and for free. We don't charge for this thing. It's just about giving for the sake of it, you know, for no monetary benefit of our type of any kind. In the doctor's opinion, it says that we basically have an altruistic movement going on around up here. And basically what that means is just what I said, that we do it without any thought of getting anything back on it. Just maybe, hopefully, that if I'm working with you, and if you come in here and you get and stay sober and I spend my time, that you'll get the opportunity, if you see somebody else walking through that door, that you'll do the same thing for them, and you'll give other things. And there is nothing more amazing in Alcoholics Anonymous than watching some guy, and I'll tell you this right now, in my personal experience, when you watch people come through the doors, and you get these people, and they come flying through the doors, and they're going to do everything, and they volunteer to read everything, and they can quote the big book, page 449 verbatim without looking at the words, and they have all the buzzwords and the catchphrases, and they sound really good. But the thing is there's a great line in the doctor's opinion. It says, the kind of information which can hold and maintain these alcoholic type must have depth and weight. And even when I was new and I didn't know what was going on, I would hear those people share it. I'd think to myself, you know what? I may not know much, but I know bullshit when I'm standing in it. And that's the thing is that, and it's not their fault. They're using the tools that they came in the doors with to do whatever they can to fit in and belong. That they're hearing other people saying the same things. But to me, the buzzwords, the catchphrase, easy does it, live and let live, one day at a time, and you too can stay sober, those kind of things. You know what? They're great tools, but they're not the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. To me, they're like bread and the meatloaf. In and of themselves, they have no real substance, no real nutritional value in the spiritual sense. But if you mix it in with everything else, praying to God, going to meetings, doing the steps, getting a sponsor, being a service, doing the stuff they say around here, all of a sudden, things that we thought we knew in our head. And I'll tell you this right now, the mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be lighted. It's not about information. It's not about memorizing page 449 and saying the right things and doing that kind of stuff. It's about believing what you hear around here and the things that we do and the actions we take. When I stand up here and I share with you guys, I believe this stuff. I don't just say it, and I believe it because it has gone from my head to my heart, and that is like light years apart, because I believe a lot of things in my head. And I might sit there and go, yeah, I know. And then all of a sudden, because I've been going to meetings, been talking to my sponsor, praying to God, and doing the steps, and I've done a third step, and I'm working on my inventory, and I'm the coffee maker, or I'm set up, or I'm the butt man, or whatever. You got to go outside and clean up the butts out in the ash, whatever it is, and all these different things that we got going on around here. And all of a sudden, something I thought I knew, and intellectually, I had it kind of right. But all of a sudden, it's got like weight, depth and weight. And all of a sudden, it's just like, wow. And when you work with somebody and you see that kind of stuff happening, and you see the tombstones in their eyes when they come in here, and then all of a sudden, you see the light come on. And then all of a sudden, you hear them laughing in a speaker meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And then all of a sudden, you see them being of service. And then you see them working with people. And all of a sudden, they got people around. These were isolated, lonely, shut-off people just like me. And basically what happens is you see them take a year cake, like you see all those people that were coming up here taking cakes tonight. And it makes you want to cry almost, thinking, you know what, I had a little part of that. And look what's going on. We've been able to save these people in ways. You don't think we have value around here? My God, what a great gift we've been given around here. I can't wait to see what happens next. When I got sober in here, I planned on dying when I was 25 years old. Today, I want to live to be the oldest living member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I want to be at the International Convention one year going, thank you for this 100-year cake. You want to talk about a change of attitude and outlook? That's what we're talking about around here. And I'm just about up, and I wish I had the time to take you through all my experiences with AA, my sponsors, the things I've had, the friends I've had, the ups and the downs, and all these great things. But it might be a journey you need to take with a sponsor that you pick out, or the friends that you surround yourself with as you come around here. And it's been an amazing journey. I'm going to wrap this up with a poem that a guy was sponsoring gave me this particular poem, and I love it because it reminds me exactly what Alcoholics Anonymous really is and what it means to me. And it's called The Touch of the Master's Hand. And it goes like this. It was battered and scarred, and the auctioneer thought it was scarcely worth his while to waste his time with the old violin, but he held it up with a smile. What am I bid, good people, he cried, who starts the bidding for me? $1, do I hear two? $2, who makes it three? $3 once, $3 twice, going for three, but no. From the room far back, a gray-bearded man came forward and picked up the bow. Then wiping the dust from the old violin and tightening up the strings, he played a melody pure and sweet as the angel sings. He played a melody pure and sweet as the angel sings. The music ceased, and the auctioneer, with a voice that was quiet and low, said, "What now my bid for this old violin?" as he held it aloft with its bow. 1,000, 1,000, do I hear two? 2,000, who makes it three? 3,000 once, 3,000 twice, going and gone, said he. The audience cheered, but some of them cried, "We don't understand. What change its worth?" Swift came the reply, the touch of the master's hand. And many a man whose life out of tune, all battered with bourbon and gin, is auctioned cheap to a thoughtless crowd, much like the old violin. A mess of pottage, a glass of wine, a game he travels on. He is going once, he is going twice, he's going and almost gone. But the master comes, and the foolish crowd never can quite understand the worth of a soul, the change that is wrought by the touch of the master's hand. And I am that battered and scarred violin. Hopefully the master has played me well. Thank you very much.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with, and it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down. And then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.